Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Great to see so many different people joining the call. Just to introduce myself, I am Rory. I am one of the partner managers at Found by Lottie. I am sure you're all expecting our wonderful host, Robin, to be joining the call today to sort of compare and lead us through the session. Sadly, he is ill, so I'm shifting between duties as both panelist on today's topic and also hosting today's webinar. We're just going to wait for a few additional attendees to join the session today. But if I hand over to my co-panelists, today we have the wonderful Tina Hansen joining us from Each Other Care. I'll let Tina introduce herself shortly, but also Dane from the aptly named Dane, who will also introduce himself in just a second. So today's topic is titled Supercharging Care. How data insights lead to better care outcomes. That is very much where we will be leading today's session, and obviously will be our key sort of talking points. I'll give it just a 1 or 2 more minutes. Just sorry, looking at my colleague who's letting people in and out. But Tina, did you want to give us a little brief overview to yourself and interest in why you're joining us on the panel today?
So absolutely. So, and first of all, thank you for having me. So my background is actually in strategy consulting. I've spent pretty much most of my working life in a consulting environment doing strategy. And I wouldn't necessarily put myself down as a data person as a starting point, but I have sort of learned the hard way that actually without good data, it's very difficult to make good decisions. And that's really why I have ended up immersing myself more and into the world of data and embracing it more willingly, so to speak. I am currently the Director of Operations and Strategy at Each Other Care, which is a group of care homes. We've got 12 care homes sort of dotted across the United Kingdom, and we've basically been on a journey of transforming this cluster of care homes into a group, which is why technology and data has become such an important part. And that's obviously why I'm here to talk today about my journey and my perspectives.
Wonderful, thanks, Tina. And just so everyone is aware, we have been working very closely together, Tina and I, now for
Yes,
around a year, with the sort of implementation of Found CRM
yes,
piece, and
and
yeah,
Lottie
so
soon.
and Lottie as well,
Yeah.
absolutely. Dane. So Dane and I have previously worked together, and I will let Dane give a bit more explanation as to who he is. But yeah, Dane and I have had a working relationship now for a few years. So Dane, it'd be great to hear about you.
Absolutely. And likewise, as Tina said, thanks for having me and Tina on the webinar. It's really lovely to be here. So I have been in the world of data and research and insights for over 15 years now, and you probably can't tell because there's a really lovely filter that's just blurring out all of the wrinkles. It's been a real journey from starting in kind of the world of market research, so doing lots of crunching numbers and helping businesses make better decisions with data. And then I sort of moved more into the health and well-being and social care space in the latter part of my career. Really trying to work more towards better outcomes for people and planet. So that's really where I've kind of been focusing my attention the last few years, and very excitingly founded my own agency last year, which, as Rory pointed out, I narcissistically called Dane. But there is a reason for it. It's actually an acronym, which is Data Analytics Insights Now. But it's very confusing when I answer the phone and I say, "Hello, Dane, Dane speaking." So very nice to be here, everyone, and excited for the chat today.
Wonderful. So if anyone has any questions during this session as well, please note there is a Q&A box just at the bottom. If you'd like to raise any questions, please pop them in there, and we'll do a bit of a Q&A towards the end of today's session. But I think it's probably worth getting jumping straight in. So the first sort of area I think it's worth covering off is actually, why are insights so important for care providers? I mean, obviously, there's a huge amount of different things that we could be looking at and talking about, but just to sort of kick things off, Dane, data and insights is such a broad topic. So where should we even start as care providers?
Yeah, I mean, and just to acknowledge that point, I mean, we live in a world now where, it's information overload. Our kitchen appliances are, emitting data. Like that's the Internet of Things, the world of AI. We live in a world where data is just everywhere, and it feels potentially pretty overwhelming, especially that it's growing, and it always feels like there's goalposts that are moving. So just to kind of acknowledge the point, if you are feeling overwhelmed by it, it's with good reason. For me, my advice would be to start really simple with a vision of what you as a business are trying to achieve. What are the strategic goals and objectives that you're trying to deliver? And even if you haven't got that clearly defined yet, start with a simple statement of, wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be great if we could get an outstanding CQC rating overall? Wouldn't it be great if we could retain the talented people that we have? Start with that vision, that end goal of where you're moving to in mind, and then ask yourself, what data do we currently collect that tells us whether or not we're moving in the right direction? Even if it's 1 or 2 data points, what are we collecting now that we could make use of? What is the quality of the data that we're collecting? So how complete is it? How accurate is it? How well is it being utilized? And then finally, what are the gaps that exist? What data aren't we collecting? And when you start answering those questions, you can very quickly start getting a bit of a roadmap to where you need to be. So where are we now? Where do we need to get to with that ultimate vision? And what role does data and insight play in that? Even if you start really, really simple and basic, and you're just collecting 1 or 2 bits of data, that's a really good starting point. And then you can build up from there. The mistake that a lot of people can make is think, oh, well, let's just collect as much data as possible, end up with really bloated, clunky spreadsheets that just end up breaking. And it just ends up feeling really overwhelming and then just not very valuable. So start with less data, but more valuable, accurate data, and then build your way up, and always have that end vision in mind of what that data is ultimately allowing you to do. What actions are you able to take based on that data? What decisions are you making, and what impact is that having on your business?
Amazing. I think that is such an important point, and as a systems provider and found by Lottie, is trying to gather for all of our clients, all of our partners, those sort of like core data insights, but actually being able to limit that down and distill information when there is so much data out there is such an important point. I mean, the next question is really for me. So, from a systems provider perspective, what is the importance of reviewing systems sort of consistently, and how to ensure you're getting the best quality of data? So, I think one of the sort of core areas that it's always worth thinking about when it is talking about data, when it's talking about systems, is how is it also optimizing your sort of system performance? How do these systems then sort of link together to help you provide more in detail insights, being able to pull data points that could be at the end of the funnel and at the start of the funnel when it's looking at, say, your sales journey, being able to sort of manage that process there more easily, more succinctly, and then also share that data with other tools, other systems. That is such an important sort of aspect and starting point to think about. If you're ending up with sort of siloed data sets and having to manually ensure where your source of truth lies and know what that sort of information is, that's starting to become a tricky process to manage, and for any business, for any provider. So making sure that your systems do talk to each other, making sure that your systems work closely together is such an important sort of starting point as well, and why you should constantly think about your systems, constantly think about where are there strengths and weaknesses in the tools that you're using, and how can they better integrate together. Brill. And so from Tina, so from your perspective, if you had to pinpoint what sort of key areas you need to get good data insights from to make decisions and to be impactful, what would those be?
Oh, you're on mute.
helpful to unmute myself. So first of all, I'm obviously very happy that Dane starts saying that actually starts with where you want to get to in terms of your strategic vision. That won't come as a surprise. I think that's important. But so linked to that, I think there's probably 5 core areas, if you need to boil it down, that I think you need good data on to be able to run a care home business effectively. And I think really in terms of just pivots around the residents pathway or the journey. So starting with really the residents in terms of who are they, where do they come from, where does the inquiries come from, that bit. Then secondly, really understanding their needs and the dependency they have. Then moving on to the care. So say who they are, what their needs are, or what is the care that you're providing? What does that look like? Something around the team, really how the well-being of the team, the construct of the team, and then lastly the sort of financial health of the business. So that kind of be the headings. And if I just do a little bit of a double click, I think in terms of the residents, it is that bit about who they are. Are they residential, dementia, respite, whatever? Where do they come from? And that's important for 2 reasons. One is that it helps you actually put yourself out in the channels where your residents, you're going to find the residents that you want to look after. And obviously that's what Found is doing very well for us and managing that occupancy. But secondly, it's also telling us some really important things about how the demand for care is changing. So we're seeing, for example, more residents with dementia coming in, people stay at home longer. So that is an indicator that the care demand is changing, which affects the service that we provide, and it sort of future-proofs our business really to understand what that profile is. Secondly, in terms of the needs, it's really about having very detailed knowledge of what care do they need, what are their likes, dislikes, to make it easier to provide meaningful care for this chapter of people's lives. And again, translating that into your rota and the kind of making sure that the commercials hang together. Then there's really tracking the care that you provide, as I say, not just from a compliance perspective, but just really being able to document that we are doing what we say we want to do. The team bit, as I come back to, I think in well documented that well-being and a well-functioning team is incredibly important to people's welfare, and that is certainly true in care as well, where it's a hard work, it's a hard job to do. So basically knowing how your team is feeling, do they have the skills they need, do they feel supported, what do you need to do to keep that workforce in a good place. And then obviously the final bit is that the financials goes without saying. You need to understand very closely what the forecast cost of care is and how that links to the funding of the care you're getting in, so you can continually sort of fine tune what you're doing. That's sort of my 5 key areas for making good decisions. There's lots of double clicks underneath that, but it all pivots around the resident, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that is always the core starting point is the resident, and that should always be the sort of forefront of everyone's mind. I think that also sort of links quite nicely onto the sort of next topic for today's webinar, which is looking at data maturity and actually understanding whether or not the data that you're looking at is impactful, which sort of links back as well to both of your points that you've made in this sort of first section. So I suppose, Dane, as a data analytics guru, what is data maturity and why is it important for care providers to try and increase this?
Yeah, so I mean, the term data maturity, what it boils down to is 3 main things. So how do you collect data? What data you're collecting? How do you collect it? How do you process that data? And ultimately, how do you use that data? And we know I love an acronym, so I came up with one for this, which spells out CARE, which is how complete, accurate, readily available, and effective in terms of decision making is your data. And that really can help you help guide you in terms of creating a plan and a pathway to higher data maturity. So on the lower end of data maturity, if you're just kind of starting out with on your journey towards high data maturity, you might be, potentially using paper-based systems or spreadsheets to kind of manage day to day. And nothing inherently wrong with either of those approaches as a starting point. It's you've got to start somewhere. But it's about kind of then moving more towards an approach where you're not just looking backwards and looking at the data that you've already collected and understanding that and analyzing it, but then also leveraging that to look forward and predict what might be happening in future. And then also moving more towards higher levels of automation so that you're not requiring so much manual input. There's things that, systems are talking to each other. Data is becoming readily available and used by people within the business. And then ultimately, you could be in a position at the highest level of data maturity where you can speak authoritatively on the subject as a thought leader and say, based on the data that we're seeing, this is what's happening within our business, and we want to share that with other businesses and share best practice with the world. So that's kind of where ultimately the highest level of data maturity can get to. But I would also say it's not a linear journey at all. You try things, you might try and implement systems or approaches that might work, they may not. You may need to go back to the drawing board. It's about iterating in a sustainable way towards high maturity. As I said, trying to run with it and go really fast towards better data maturity is really going to cause some headaches and not necessarily give you the value that you want. But the inherent value of good data maturity is ultimately all those things that Tina talks about, those 5 areas, is that you're going to be able to confidently have good visibility of everything that's happening in your business. And again, not just what's happened, but also what might happen in future. Workforce planning, financial sustainability, better care outcomes. These are all the things that can be benefits of high data maturity.
Amazing. I mean, and actually, Dane, if we stick with you for now as well, what do you view as some of the core areas that actually limit data maturity and hinder that progress?
I'd say the biggest thing that can limit data maturity is lack of buy-in from the business. So, and this does start with senior leadership ultimately. There needs to be a focus on it. Otherwise, if there's no ownership and accountability and reporting at board level or at senior level, then it makes it really challenging for the rest of the business to move this forward. So I think, that ownership and accountability and buy-in as a starting point. But there's also the kind of general challenge of people feeling overwhelmed with already what they've got to do on their plates. On a day-to-day basis, you might be feeling like, well, when am I going to have time to move all of this forward? How am I going to do this on the side? And I can totally appreciate that perspective. What I would say is that if you get to a place where you've got high levels of data maturity, you've got your systems all syncing together, you've reduced your admin burden, you've got good visibility, you're making better decisions. That ultimately is going to free you up to do these things. So think of it as data maturity being the enabler to improving the general functioning of the business, people's capacity, people's well-being. It's an enabler rather than something that is just another project to do on the side. So it's all about the culture around how this is viewed within the business. And if it's viewed positively and a necessity, of course, it's going to be driven forward. If it's seen as an admin burden and another thing to do, that's really going to hinder progress.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you've looked at my panelist notes because that was also going to be my key answer there. But I absolutely wholeheartedly agree that buy-in is single-handedly the most important part that you could have with any sort of data progress and becoming data driven. It is always coming down from the top and having that sort of trickle down effect as well. It's so important to have that sort of buy-in to become data driven and to find and commit the time and the resource behind it is so important. I mean, another part of it that I also think is really important, and you're going to hear me say this quite a lot, is linking back to my first point, which is having outdated systems, not sort of upgrading and building your tech stack to be data focused, to be forward thinking, and to have information that is siloed is one of the biggest problems with growing that data maturity. Making sure that you have the ability to access information, even when it is getting it out of the system easily into an Excel spreadsheet. That is a really good starting point. Being able to then link that up, as Dane has mentioned, automate those processes to completely sort of hook everything up together so that you're not having to do this admin process, so that you can focus on the outcomes, not the input. That is such an important part in my view as well. Bro, so Tina, I mean, what's the best way for people in your roles to get that buy-in that Dane is sort of Dane covered, and get the sort of commitment from the rest of the team around data and the importance of information, and sort of investment behind that as well? How would you sort of go about getting that buy-in?
Yeah, no, so first of all, I completely agree that the buy-in is where it all starts. And I think reality is that building data maturity typically means you're asking people to make time in already busy days to collect more data, using more processes, and getting their heads around new systems. That isn't going to put you top on their Christmas card list. So getting across that hurdle, I think there's sort of three things to bear in mind, and what we certainly worked at within Each Other Care. And the first one is really be the kind of selling the dream. So it's very easy to get caught up as a business in all the wonderful things you can do. If you have this data, we can become more efficient, or we can cut some costs and all that sort of stuff. And I think there's a need to pivot that towards what is in it for the individual that you are going to effectively inconvenience, because you're asking them to do different things in addition to what they're already doing. So bring to life what's in it for you. And I think to touching on really what you guys have said as well, we have had a really keen focus on how data maturity and improving data maturity through collecting a lot more data and using a lot of systems will reduce or eliminate the time you spend on stuff that is frustrating, time-consuming, boring, repetitive, and which effectively is taking away time from you doing what you really came to work to do, which in our setting is about spending time with the residents and their relatives, developing the service, developing the team, all that stuff. So you're constantly feeling that you're chasing your tail and you're only just managing the kind of the hygiene stuff. And that has really kind of helped us get people to say, okay, actually, I get it. There's something in it for me, because it's actually going to change the way I feel in my day to day. So that's one thing. The second bit has been, again, linked to what we talked about before, is really aligning everybody around a bigger vision in terms of what it is we are trying to achieve, and what is the role of data and data maturity in getting us there. And so our purpose is to care for people in a way that contributes to meaningful lives. And so we continuously linking all these initiatives and the asks around data to that purpose, and basically showcasing how what we're asking and what we're suggesting will help us move towards delivering on purpose. And it really breaks down to saying, being able to, we can do things smarter. So fewer manual interventions, less reworking, instant access, real time, blah, blah. So that's smarter, the better. Basically the quality of what you've got, lower cost of achieving it, more consistency, that sort of stuff. And lastly, safer, fewer errors, better ability to preempt and mitigate that kind of stuff. And that's been sort of, we're basically saying, so everything we do needs to tie back to our purpose and improving on these, smarter, better, safer. That has also really helped keep us honest and sort of straight on point. And then I think the third thing that's necessary to get the buy-in is to really step out of your own shoes and jump into the shoes of the people you're asking to make the change, and to understand what does it feel like to be on the receiving end of this, in the day-to-day they've got, the challenges, do they have the knowledge, the understanding, the tools, the training to make this possible, and to create the permission field for people to be really frustrated and annoyed. And this is taking time, it's not working, and making that, because that creates an engagement around why we're doing it, what we need to make it better. So you can, it becomes sort of embedded within the fabric of how we work. And I think, I mean, Rory, you have had to be incredibly patient with us on the found journey, you know, lots and lots of meetings and retraining and running through stuff. And it feels like it's, and again and again, but if that's what it takes, so be it, you know, that. So yeah, so really boiling down to, you know, selling the dream, aligning around a bigger vision for how this is going to help you get there, and then you know, changing shoes, so to speak. That would be the observation from our business.
Absolutely. I think it's such an interesting point, and actually it sort of links as well with care home managers. And you know, there's a big sort of difference between other businesses where the home managers themselves have to have quite a lot of autonomy, have to be able to make these decisions, and actually getting that buy-in, getting that entire process and those 3 steps together allows care home managers, allows your team to make informed decisions more autonomously, to allow them to operate you know, effectively. And I think it's such an important point, and you know, really interesting points. And yeah, absolutely getting that buy-in. I also would point out there, you know, having supplier buy-in as well, to give you that support, give you that
Yes.
you know, that backing to help the team develop and grow. You know, does link really closely with that as well. So always, I would say, always look out for the providers who are always willing to give you that support and growth, like Found.
You have to rare patience. So I would say you're definitely you know, I completely agree.
Perfect. I don't mean to blow my own trumpet there.
No, but
I also perfect. And I think that sort of quite nicely loops around to data quality and you know, the next sort of key topic that we wanted to discuss today, which is you know, as we mentioned at the start, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of data points that a care provider could be looking at. Where should we, I know we sort of, where should we start, but what are the sort of core areas that we should concentrate on, especially, you know, I think, Tina, linking back to one of your earlier points of starting with the resident, in my view, one of the key data areas that we should be looking at is sort of like customer satisfaction. That can really help provide those insights into, you know, how are your residents feeling, where are the work, you know, areas to work on within the homes, all of those sort of key things. That for me is one of the key data points that we should be working on. But Tina, Dane, if we start with you, Tina, what would you say is some of the sort of core areas, core priorities to kick off with? You're on mute, Tina.
So do you mean in terms of the core priorities for where we're collecting data, or for where to embed systems?
Well,
or is that?
Apologies. I'll reframe the question. How do you know what data points should we concentrate on? That is very much my brain not working there. So apologies for that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, so I think it comes back to the sort of the first questions around basically what are the data points that you need to in our case, we looked, as I say, the resident pathway. So what are the data points we need to collect to be able to make informed decisions? So I mean, kind of, I guess it's a double clicking a bit like that. It's starting with the residents, so coming into it, as I say, it's knowing exactly the profile of the resident, the inquiry. It's for the care is using the right care planning system. So you're really logging what care you're providing as relative to what was needed. Having the compliance side of things stitched in nicely, so that you can preemptively make changes to what you do, mitigate the risk of safeguardings. So it's basically, so I guess it's basically data points that links into all those core areas around who the residents are, their needs, the care you provide, how the team is doing, and the financials around it. Probably be my kind of brief assessment. So I think it's yeah, and I guess linked to that is also that you mentioned yourself. There's a lot of data points, and I think that's probably been one of our discoveries, that we have been really focused on. We need all this data, so we've implemented a lot of systems are underway. I mean, I don't know, 10 probably different systems in the space of a year. Very excited about all the data, and then suddenly it dawned on us that actually we were creating a data swamp rather than a nice data lake, and actually that we were ending up spending, or would be spending as much time looking for data, but just in new places, and be potentially even more overwhelmed. So the data paralysis was very evident that would be coming our way. So I think collecting the right data, but then actually distilling it in something, and I think that's where Dane is going to come to the rescue, because we basically decided to create a dashboard that brings in and hooks up all this information into meaningful KPIs linked to our business targets. I think that's I mean, it seems very obvious, but it really has become very apparent that all these systems, they can produce an enormous amount of really useful information, but how do you access that in an effective way is just as critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, just to bring Dane in on this question as well, where would you start if you were looking at that data swap? Not where would you start, how would you know what data points should be concentrated on within that plethora of different information points? Yeah, same question to you, Dane, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I love data swamp as a term. It's so accurate for describing what it can feel like, wading through just, like absolute, reams of data that don't actually add a lot of value. For me, it's about asking yourself 3 questions when it comes to every data point. And Tina, I know that you can speak to this from an exercise that you've been doing internally. So first question is, what action will you take off the back of that data point? The second question is, what impact is that going to have on your business? And then the third question is, and the most crucial question in my view, why is that important? Why is that important for your business? And this is where you do that 5 whys exercise, or however many whys. And I don't like the term 5 whys. Just ask yourself why until you get to the real reason. You might have something like, we want to improve our CQC rating. We want to achieve our outstanding overall. Okay, why? Well, because obviously that's going to, look better externally. We're going to attract more business. We're going to improve our reputation. Cool. Why is that important? And so on and so on and so forth, until you get to the real crux of why that is actually going to do something impactful for your business. So I know that, Tina, for example, had a really very robust exercise of hundreds of KPIs that were potential candidates for making its way into a central dashboard where you could make decisions. And having to go through those ruthlessly and ask yourself those hard questions, like, what will this ultimately give us? And if you struggle to answer the question, there's a good chance that data point isn't actually right, or isn't good for right now, but might be something that's useful down the line. So it takes time. It really does take time to whittle those data points down to the ones that are most meaningful. And it's also going to be a continually shifting picture. Say you then achieve the goals that you've set out to achieve. Those data points may no longer be relevant in a year's time, or even a quarter's time, or whatever it might be. This is a constant iterative process that is going to be a moving picture depending on where your business is at any given time. But again, it comes back to my previous point. Keep it as simple as you possibly can. People like simple. It can, avoiding the data swamp is about like having as few metrics as you can, but as valuable as they possibly can be.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree on that, where keeping things simple helps tell a really useful data story as well, and helps you get to that real why, the sort of core reason. Keeping it simple is always going to be the best solution, and you can build from there. It's always the best foundations, and getting those essential foundations in place will always be crucial there. So Tina, I mean, what systems other than Found, obviously being a shining light, a beacon of hope, what systems are you using at the moment at Each Other Care, and how do you make sure that all of those data points are consolidated and easy to manage?
Yeah, so I mean, we just a bit of context. We started. We were probably about 12, 14 months ago. We were fully paper based, everything in all the care homes, and we have been on quite a steep, I don't know, materialization journey. I don't know if that's a word, but really digitalizing. So we've pretty got my system on across the whole life cycle, and just as I'm not on any commission or sponsorship deals, but obviously if you started the resident journey is really Lottie and Found, Found, so Lottie to soon, but Found helping us understand where they come from, managing the occupancy. For the care in terms of understanding the needs is PCS, and we use Camerscope as our email system, and then we're developing an in-house dependency tool because we weren't quite content with what we could get, so we're doing our own thing for that one, and also we're just trialing a continence management tool that can basically make sure that you don't wake people up necessarily and improve skin integrity and that kind of stuff. So that's the care side of thing. In terms of the team, we are using a system called Connect Team, which is kind of a rota. It could do lots of things, but it's a timesheet, clocking in, clocking out, rota planning, internal chat function, repository for lots of documentation. But it's really using it to kind of connect us as a business across 12 localities and make sure everybody's on the same page. It's made it a lot easier to manage people's time, publishing rota, requesting time off, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm just trying to think what else we're doing. So compliance radar we're implementing at the moment, and then in the finance world we are just decided to move to Sage Intact. And there's probably a few. Oh yeah, and then something called Asset Tiger to manage all our procurement and the assets in the house, or in the homes, basically making sure that we know when dishwashers need to be replaced or where do you go for repairs, and basically sort of a tagging system for all our assets. So lots of stuff, and it's been busy, as you can imagine. This is
Yeah, absolutely very busy.
And that's also why, to come back to say, how do you know that it all speaks together? Well, it doesn't at the moment, which is why Dane is coming to the rescue, because it's very clear that this is going to be incredibly overwhelming unless we actually do make sure that it talks together. Because fundamentally, you're probably talking about less than 20 KPIs. You need to have a really good handle on the business, and that means, tying in lots of data sources.
Absolutely. I think really that covers a good perspective of the sort of next point that I wanted to bring onto. So really good segue there. Tools and organizational tools. So Dane, taking all of those different sources, those different information points, what tools can care providers use to manage their data and sort of actually start warehousing this information?
Yeah, so and just to your earlier point, Rory, just about tools like Found integrating with other tools, which is really great, because it obviously means that systems are speaking to each other. But when it comes to getting the data out of these various systems and into a format where you're seeing a really kind of consolidated view across the business, this is where data visualization and business intelligence tools come into play. So things like Power BI, if you're using Microsoft, that's a nice easy one. It's usually included within your subscription. Tableau is another one. Looker. There's lots of different data visualization tools out there. I tend to favor Power BI personally, just because it does. If you're using Microsoft tools, it integrates really well with that, and also, it just makes linking everything up much easier. So for me, it's really leveraging those tools that you already have that are already included in your subscriptions and kind of making the most out of the insights functions that you can get from those tools. But if you're kind of then moving more towards a high level of data maturity within the kind of the Power BI space. Microsoft have a product called Fabric, which is really about, to your point, Rory, warehousing the data in a really kind of meaningful way, that so the data is not just flowing into a swamp. It's organized, it's clean, it's transformed in a way that's ready for analysis and then ready for visualization in Power BI. That data can then also be used for a whole bunch of other purposes. For example, you can use it to build custom apps. You can use it to integrate with other systems and push data to them, so that you've got like this. Think of it as a central repository which can ingest data. Everything can come into it, but then data can also go out of it back again once it's nice and clean and transformed and ready to go to the rest of the business. So so Fabric and Power BI. If you're in a Microsoft business, if you use other tools, if you might be using Google, you can use things like Looker Studio, Tableau, and there's tons and tons of data warehousing tools out there. Snowflake is a big one that people they like to use. But what I would say is you can make a lot of use of the tools that you're already using. So for example, if you are still using spreadsheets, there's a lot of functionality within spreadsheets that you can do pivot tables and pivot charts, and start from a point of, I know how to use that, or I know someone in the business who's a whiz with Excel. Start from a point that you can start getting the insights from the data that using the tools you already have. And then it's a journey moving to those more kind of powerful business intelligence tools like Power BI.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, when it comes to data warehousing, it's very much the money laundering tool for legitimate data. Absolutely. So, I mean, Tina, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on what are the tools that have had real impact, and actually it'd be great to hear any sort of key success stories you've had from using systems and or data at each other care in the last sort of 12 months going through this journey. Where have your biggest impacts been?
Yeah, so I think because as we're still on the journey very much. A lot of these systems, they are not fully implemented. So I think I probably can't point to a one shiny example of of something that has been achieved as a result of a one particular system. But actually, I think probably more importantly, I think the success story, I guess, is that it's on the back of lots of little wins. So all the stuff that we've been doing, we're not at the point where we're fully utilizing it, but the systems, I mean, Found being one of them, Connecting probably being another one, the email system, that is just making little improvements to the day-to-day for people in the homes. I mean, a little bit faster, a little bit safer, a little bit quicker to do. And in collection, that has meant that actually it has basically created the buy-in that we want to. So I'm now finding that people are calling me up saying, I wonder if this could be done, because, so I'm looking for this, and sometimes it can, sometimes not, but where previously maybe their default would have been to start writing things on a piece of paper or creating a spreadsheet, where the go-to position is now increasingly, could we use data for this? And for me, that is actually, I'm very happy that is, I think that's a fantastic starting point, because with that buy-in, we can do a lot of stuff, because people are, basically we've sold the dream, so to speak, which is the bedrock for us being able to get further, because without it, we're just not really going to achieve much. And it is, in the little things, to say, managing occupancy, or the weekly reporting cycle. I think we probably think that we've saved about a day a week per home between the admin and the finance team. Just little things, fewer frustrations, not calling around chasing things. Another, I would say, a small win, but nonetheless a big one, is the ways of working. So what systems and data has brought with it is much more clarity around how people should work together and who does what. And obviously, again, Found is a great example of, an inquiry comes in, well, who should be picking up and doing what with it? And things don't fall between the chairs. And I think that has removed some of that mental overload that the managers often have. They're worried, they're lying in bed thinking, oh, crikey, I forgot to hand over this piece of information, or, that sort of. And by changing the way we work and the clarity of who does what, again, that has just eliminated some of the friction, if you like, and I think just makes for more content teams, so to speak. And then I guess maybe a last one would be so in terms of culture, because we dotted around 12 different sites, and it's difficult or can be difficult to make people feel like part of a bigger group if you never see each other. But actually, in some of the ways, even though we often say that technology, replaces the human and dehumanizes interactions and all that sort of stuff, our experience is probably the opposite. That is actually created more connection because we can connect, we cross fertilize, we share more. We have little systems champions in the different homes that work with the other homes. So they're speaking to people they would never really need to speak to, but they're now because they're wearing the hat that they are in charge of something. So culturally, I think it's done a lot as well. So it's yeah. So it's not a one success story as much, but it's more the little wins that adds up to a lot.
Absolutely. I think that's such a important point, and one I think we will close up on today for the sort of pre-prepared element of today's webinar. So thank you, Tina, for sharing that, and thank you, Dane, as well, for joining. We have plenty of time for questions. As I mentioned at the start, there is a Q&A box just at the bottom. There's also a chat box as well if you'd like to write up any questions there. But if you do have any questions for myself, for Dane and for Tina, we'd be delighted to share our insights and answers. So we have any questions from anyone? Let me just double check the chat box. If not, Dane, would you like to give a little bit of an overview, potentially, of what you can help offer to care providers and why it would be beneficial, maybe them getting in touch with you after today's webinar is to have a chat with you about what sort of things you can help them achieve.
Oh, of course, I love a shameless plug. So yeah, I mean, really, I started my agency based on what I've seen kind of in various organizations, which was the idea that decision making is so often not data driven, or it can be. And in fact, I do maintain that your previous experiences, your hunches, your gut instincts, that is data. At the end of the day, it's information that you're using to make decisions, and sometimes that can be really powerful based on what you've learned before. But I think it's not super scalable. It's the knowledge and experience that lives in your brain is not something that can easily be shared with everyone. And so for me, the reason I started Dain was to help businesses bring clarity to decision making, making sure that everyone across the business who needs access to data has it, and that they know what they can do with that data, and it makes their lives easier, makes their ability to do their jobs better. I remember when I did a dashboard for MindUp, which is the business that Rory and I worked at together. The account management team said, we just don't have any visibility on when our contracts are up for renewal, or what risk we have of our clients churning, or how well they're utilizing the service. And I built a dashboard which pulled all this data together from HubSpot, from a booking system, from finance software, and the impact of that was that ultimately MindUp experienced zero churn of their clients in 2024, which I was incredibly proud of, because it's not like they had high levels of churn before that. I think they had churned maybe a few clients a year, but it went from that to absolutely zero churn because they were able to see all of that data in one place and have clear decision making off the back of it. Like, oh, this contract needs renewing. There's an upsell opportunity here. There's there's a churn risk over here, and it's about moving from being a reactive business to being a proactive business, where you're using that data to make decisions to anticipate the things that might go wrong and get ahead of them. So that for me really is what spurred me on to start this business in the first place, was give businesses that level of confidence in decision making, that they know that the data doesn't lie. It's also about what happens before then. So a big part of what I do with businesses is try and improve the data quality flowing in the first place, because ultimately bad data in, bad data out. So it's about working together to help everyone understand the value. And I think, to your point, Tina, is selling the dream of what will you personally get out of this, not what the business as a whole, because obviously that's incredibly important, but what does each individual get out of doing that? Because otherwise it just feels like admin. It just feels like filling in a form, or clicking a button or doing whatever with no end result. So it's about working with people to get that buy-in and help them understand what their input is ultimately going to lead to, but then give them that value back. So this is where tools like Power BI really come in, where it's like, here's a dashboard for your team specifically, and these are the metrics you as a team care about and you as an individual care about, and it's because of the data that you provided that you can see this beautiful dashboard with accurate figures that help you do your job better. So those are main areas of where I can help businesses improve their data maturity.
Absolutely. And if anyone is interested in getting in touch with Dane, you can do so directly. Dane, what is your email address? And I'll pop it in the chat.
Hello@Dain.agency, and that's Dane, confusingly spelled Dain. As I say, I love an acronym. So hello@Dain.agency if you want to get in touch.
Wonderful. And of course, if you need to get in touch with me, you can do. I'm pretty sure everyone here has my email. Probably at some point I've emailed everyone on the call. But yeah, that would be rory@foundcrm.care. We haven't had any questions drop into the chat box. So if no one has any burning desire to ask any questions, we'll be wrapping up the webinar now. Anyone who does ask any questions and has something pops into your head, feel free to reach out again to rory@foundcrm.care, and we can very much answer those questions from the three of us. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today, and I hope you found it an insightful and useful session. Any questions, any follow-ups, any thoughts, please do get in touch with us. Thank you again to Tina. Thank you, Dane, for joining and providing such great insights, both.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Very, very lovely to be here, and hope you all have a lovely rest of your day.
The same for me. Thank you very much.